So unfortunately, we had to remove someone from the class. Jessica is no longer with us now. So now it is going to be 3 teams of 3. By no means is this. So we set rules early in the class, and we just had to enforce them. Unfortunately, one of the things I want to say is that I know that changes sort of the dynamic because it's a pretty small class. But what I want to be is super upbeat about it. We will figure that out accordingly. I'm actually really proud of everyone who's here, who's submitted their work and all that stuff, because you guys have done a great job. And we'll continue to move forward. And you guys have huge projects ahead of you. And I will try to assist in any way that I can to iron out this transition for this week. So I will talk to the relevant people afterwards. But again, super proud of everyone here. I think you guys have done a great job. And this is a little bit unfortunate, but it's just how things work. Okay? Cool. Cool. So we are in a smaller room today. But anyways, we have not fully graded all the homeworks. But does one of the TAs want to point out some of the good projects?
Oh, we say it on slide.
But as we can see, maybe we'll talk about them next time. But what we see is that we have a lot of great projects that were submitted. This again was a continuation from last time's homework. And you guys can just take a look at everyone has submitted.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, good job. We'll put out some of the better ones.
I'm so proud of you guys.
Yeah. Cool. And then going back to Twitter, for those who use TwitterKit, how many of you guys use TwitterKit? Yes, no, for this project. 1, 2, 3. TwitterKit? Okay. Yeah, so TwitterKit definitely made things easier in terms of some of these requests that were made. They required less parameterization, but going through the API calls directly obviously is a good experience, but there is TwitterKit, which makes things a lot more abstract and easier to use. So if you guys get the opportunity to play with Twitter again, hopefully for your final projects, you can just go ahead and switch over to TwitterKit. Cool. So what are we going to do today? Today we are going to talk about content providers. Content providers. Does anyone know what a content provider is? And what? Build.gradle? Yeah. What is it? What does that do? In a new project. All right. We will call this lecture 5 projects for your school. And again, I apologize for such a small room. Okay, cool. So let's create a new project. Who knows about content providers? Content providers?
It's buying the content.
That's great. It's actually somewhat self-explanatory in terms of what it is, but does anyone sort of? So why would you have a content provider, or what in the context of Android? What is the purpose of a context provider? Anyone?
You can make your some data of your app accessible to other apps.
Yeah, that's perfect. So yes, it's data is retained on your device, especially if you have a local store somehow, and oftentimes, because as we know, all apps are sandboxed to their particular process, this is sort of a way to communicate between processes, as well as also communicating within your app. like data, like basically transferring data. Does that make sense? Like so basically, if you have your own app, let's say you collect info on K-pop, people, you would be able to expose that through your own content provider interface. Okay. Let me bring up the slides here so that we can take a look at this. Sorry. Yeah. So what is the most important thing about a content provider is actually the URI. So, like if you, for example, you guys make a REST call to Twitter, that is actually an abstraction. The fact that they name it like Twitter/search is a form of abstraction, right? Because they're not just simply saying, they're basically creating a concrete abstraction for their business. Does that make sense? URLs and naming is the simplest form of abstraction that you can define, because it's sort of defining a higher level purpose, even like variable naming, for example. So URIs are extremely important because they are defining a concrete interface for you to, in this case, read and write data, right? Does that make sense? Cool. So in general, on Android, we have a lot of different providers. Some of the most commonly used ones are Media Store, Settings, Booksmarts, but the most used one, of course, is Contacts. So all of you guys have Android phones. Hopefully all of you guys have Android phones. You guys punched in, I don't know, your Google Contacts on your phone. And a lot of apps want to leverage that, right? Does anyone have examples of apps that leverage your contact info?
Like Facebook, they
Facebook.
send your contact to other app friends.
Yes, they do that. Any other ones?
Have you used Zello?
Zello? Well, no, I don't know what Zello is. What is Zello?
Zello is like a social media for Vietnamese people.
Interesting. I will download it. I'll download it and use it.
They use contact. Zello take the contact of phone.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually, there was a big fiasco with this when companies initially started. They were just downloading. They were downloading everyone's contact and transferring it. They were transferring it not over to their servers. They were transferring it unencrypted, so people could literally read off everyone's contact info. Like, you guys know the difference between HTTP and HTTPS, right? HTTPS is encrypted. HTTP is unencrypted. So people were getting access to their contacts, downloading it all, transferring it over to their servers unencrypted, and everyone could read it. So, but again, Contacts is actually great. And for me and my background, I was a growth person, and so Contacts was extremely important for sharing. And once you get a single user, leveraging that contact information to share to another user. Okay, cool. So contact information, provider data is all in here. And yeah, it just allows you to communicate, right? So a content provider actually can run as a separate process if you want. That minimizes the memory footprint of your app, because what you'll have is two separate processes running. But if you are making it available for your own app, it's just a nice way to abstract data, right? So the other option is what we experienced before, right? Writing straight to Realm or writing straight to SQLite. Cool, so let's just dive in, okay? New project. So what do we want to do? So let's just say that what we want to show is a dialogue fragment that shows all the contact info, okay? All the contact people. So we're going to create a contact dialogue fragment. And a new layout. what do we call it? Fragment contact. And what are we going to throw in? We'll throw in a list view, right? List view. And we'll give that an ID. List view contacts. Okay? Perfect. And then in the dialog fragment, go over on create. Create view. And what we're going to do, right? We're going to say inflator, inflate, r.layout, fragment contact, container, false. Right, nothing that we haven't done before. So, and then we'll have private, so list view, contacts. Contacts equals list view find ID r dot ID dot LV contacts, right? And then return view. Okay. So now what do we want to do? We want to, so actually if I just call it from here, it will do nothing, right? If I basically say new contact dialog fragment, well, right. Dot show get fragment manager, and then we'll just call this contacts, right?
Support fragment.
Oh yeah, yep, that's right. Nice job. Contacts, and that's right. Okay. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all the little mistakes that come along with it, and so you can sort of see and iterate through it with me. So yeah, it basically shows empty, right? Because we don't have any list adapter, nothing, right? Okay, so now the question is, how do you interact with the contact data? Does anyone know? No. Okay. All right, cool. So let's override. First, let's override on activity created, right? So the thing about fragments and activities is that you want to go and load this data from another process or another content provider, and how they go and fetch that data is actually tied extremely. It is binded pretty deeply with the fragment. So what they provide is something actually called a load manager. So similar like how you call get fragment manager, there is a loader manager. Okay. And so for every loader managers don't they don't know how to get the data. They just know they're an interface for loaders to go and retrieve data from whatever source and then give it back to the fragment or activity to process. Okay? And they're tied very deeply with the fragment and activity lifecycle, similar to how a fragment manager is also tied to the lifecycle and all that other stuff. So if you're working with things like a contacts or your own content provider, use a loader manager. So from on activity created, we basically call init. So an ID is basically, so a loader manager is a manager of loaders. So the ID is basically like a name. So you can basically just give it a name. So if I say static final int, let's call it contacts loader. Oops. Contact loader. And let's assign it to 1. Okay? Contact loader, and let's take a look at what the other ones are. Bundle, we can say null. And then we have this thing called callbacks. Loader callbacks, right? So basically we want to pass it and delegate so that whenever the loader goes through its lifecycle, we want to trigger callbacks. It's no different from an activity lifecycle. So in this case, you could create a new loader or loader callback object, but we can actually pass this. Okay, so why is this an error? This is an error because we did not implement loader callbacks. Okay, and in this case, I'm going to jump ahead. So what contacts provide you is no different than a SQLite database. It provides you a cursor. Does everyone remember what a cursor does? Yes, no, iffy? And why a cursor? 1, 2, 3? There's some iffies. There's some iffies. Okay. Why a cursor? Why is it a cursor again?
I think cursor is the best way to provide the data for the SQLite database.
Right, and it's because it doesn't move data. Right, it does, well, after you run the query and it calculates the data, you don't move the data until you need it, right? So remember how we were saying that if you threw it into a list, you could blow out your memory because databases tend to hold a lot more data, right? So especially contacts, I don't know how many contacts you are. Some people are very sociable and they probably have a lot of contacts. I am not, so I only have like 100 or so. But you can imagine, right? If you loaded 1,000, and this has actually happened in our case at Game Time, where we had an app that had someone who had like something like 1,500 contacts, and what we did was we tried to load that into an array or a hash map and re-index it how we wanted to. That actually crashed our app, and we didn't detect that. So it's much better to, again, run a SQL query against whatever context. You'll see how it works. And then from there, a cursor gives you a pointer into that calculation, and then you can read, right? That's why we work with cursors. Okay, cool. Okay, let's do a few things first, right? So what we're also going to do is create like an adapter, right? So there's something called the cursor adapter, and let's view contacts adapter. Okay, and then let's do contacts adapter equals new simple cursor adapter. And what does it take? It takes this. It takes what else? Let's see. It takes ID for the resources. So in this case, I think Android already has one for us. Layout. Okay, simple list item 1. And then there are a few other options in here, which we will get to later. There's a from, a to, and a flags. Okay, so flags will for sure say it's 0. The initial cursor is also null because we're basically loading, so there's no cursor. And then for now, I'll put in a from and a to. So let's see. One is I think they're both. Okay, one's two. And I will describe what this is in a bit. Okay, from, to, and to. Context. Is everything making sense so far? And that'll be contacts, set adapter, S2 context adapter. Okay? Any questions?
One form is to
Yeah. I'll get there. I'll get there. So that actually comes here in the onCreate loader. Okay? So what we're gonna have to do now is basically, if we go back to slides, you will see that we will actually have to create a cursor loader to go and basically get the data. See? So the cursor loader takes a URI, remember the abstraction, and then these things that are currently null, you can actually send like which columns do I want, and then arguments. So basically, it's no different than a query string, right? Do you guys remember SQLite? You want to select from tables where, you know, like ID equals question mark, and then you fill in the ID later, right? Okay. So anyways, let's for now, let's leave it null like this, and I'll show you exactly what happens. Okay. Okay. So cursor loader, context. Let's see. Get activity. URI. So okay, this part's important. Content URI. So right now, context is there's a context content provider that has already built a content provider for you. What the way they expose it is they expose it through a URI, right? So if you click through it, you can see that they're saying, okay, I have an authority URI, which is content com.android.content slash context, right? So I think there's a few other ones in here that you can get. Okay, and then from here we will pass null, null, and null. URI. But if we look at how this gets called, basically what it's doing is it basically uses your content resolver and it passes it straight to query, right? So it passes URI, your projection, which is what columns do you want back, and your selection, which is your select query, and then your selection arguments. Is this all making sense, or is this a little bit confusing? Confusing? It seems like it's confusing. Okay. Confused? Not confused? Kind of confused. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Confused. Okay. Okay. So, Daniel, like, what can I help explain?
Um,
Let me figure out what it's. Okay, there's no constructor like this. URI. Is this URI? That's URI.
basically the arguments to this constructor.
Yep.
Just
Okay, perfect. So you have access to a content URI of which is all the contacts. The truth is you don't want all the contacts sometimes. Sometimes if someone runs a search, for example, you want to run a query saying, I want to search these columns of, right? I want to search phone number, I want to search email, maybe. So you can actually pass it a SQL query, basically. Does that make sense? So you can, the selection args are the select query, and then the projection are the parameters that you want to get back.
not the argument. The project.
Yeah, I mean, shoot. That's what sucks about it. Can you something? Okay. Okay. So usually it's select, ID, name, email, where maybe phone equals question mark, right? So in the 3 parameters that you're passing through under cursor loader, your projection is this. Your selection is this. And then your selection argument is this. So let's say my phone number is 650-305-0641. Does that make sense? And then order is whatever. Descending, Does that make sense? They're trying to abstract away SQL, which kind of is what makes it confusing and problematic. But remember, the reason why they're doing this is because remember when I went to the example of building a SQL database, what did I have to do? Actually, I had that open. I think it's here. What do we have to do? Every single time we had to create a name, right? We had to do a private static. We had to name everything, remember? We had to name every single column and stuff like that. And I told you should create a static member variable for each one of those. And you'll see why they're abstracting it like this, because under contacts, for example, let's say no, right? But so then let's define our projection. Private static final string projection equals and I will show you what projection stuff is. I don't remember off the top of my head, so I have to okay, yeah. Display name primary, right? Oops. Contacts dot. I think there's something called ID. Does that make sense? It's no different than what we were doing here with our database helper. They just made it public, right? Instead of this being private, it was the table name is public, right? And then now your individual columns, which I told you to move to private static member variables, are also public. So they're literally exposing their so that you don't have to type in string underscore ID, string underscore, right? They're sort of defining these constants that you can use with projection, and that's why they're trying to abstract it. It's confusing, I understand, but that's what the problem with cursor loaders and content providers is. You're often just remapping a lot of stuff. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Yeah, I figured that would be a point of confusion. So, okay, so yeah, we can say we want right, and we can say okay, well we want this projection, and okay, on load finish. What we do is we actually, so we have our adapter, and then we can basically call swap cursor, and then pass in the cursor. So the cursor adapter, what it does is it accepts a cursor, and when you pass it a new cursor, it knows to refresh the data. That's how it works. Okay, hence swap cursor. All right. Does that make sense? And then on loader reset, we're basically saying that that existing cursor is out of date, so you actually pass in null. A little bit confusing, right? Because there's a lot of nesting here, there's a lot of things that are hidden. But again, the loader manager manages loaders within the activity and fragment life cycles. Your loader is working, in this case, with a content provider through a URI and through select queries or queries that you're passing it to get the data back as a cursor and for you to now assign it to the list view to be used. Yes? Okay. Okay, so let's run it. And it will fail. Why will it fail? Does anyone know?
Don't have any contact.
Yes. Well, that's part of it. Denial. Right? Permission, right? Okay. This is where it gets tricky. This is where it gets a little bit annoying. Okay? So there's two types of permissions that you can get. The old permission is this, right? Remember how if we want use internet, what do we want? Read contacts. Great. Let's run it again. It's going to fail. It's going to fail for a very particular reason. Remember, one of the biggest things about Android is we support compatibility. The way Android Play Store used to work was that whatever you put in your manifest, the Play Store would say, you must accept these permissions in order to download this app. If you don't, then you can't download the app. Right? That's changed in the newer model where you have to prompt. You have to prompt early. Like they say you can download an app now without accepting these permissions, but you have to prompt them. But this only is, I think, available for something like above 23. I think that changes on whatever 23 is. Is that Honeycomb? 23 Honeycomb? I don't remember. Foam, do you remember? No? Okay. Right? So it's painful. So you actually have to have both. Like if you want to support something, you have to both, and you have to conditionalize both. So you have to literally say, oh, if it's Honeycomb, do this, so on and so forth. Okay? So let's not do that. Let's, in this case, let's just take our Gradle and we will change this min SDK version to 23. Actually, let's not change it yet. Sorry. Because you'll actually see the error when we do it. So in your main activity, okay, we're going to remove this to a function private void show contacts. Okay? And then we have to ask for permission, right? So how does that work? Does anyone know? So they have this thing called context compat. Check self permission, this, and then let's see, what was it? Something like manifest permission contacts, and then if it's not equal to granted or something like that. Painful. Requires an int. What is it? Manifest. Shoot, I don't remember. Something. It's supposed to be granted. Granted. Too much nesting. I'll figure out in a sec. Okay. So if it's not equal to granted, we got to request permissions. So permissions is a new string. So you can request a bunch at a time. In this case, we're just requesting one. And then you put a request code. Why is there a request code? Does anyone know? Yeah. Equals, let's say 1. And then, okay. So what happens here? It says you don't have the right version, min version is not right. So in this case, we're going to change this back to 23 in order to do that. I will actually come back and report on how to do that better in order to support multiple versions. It's still kind of just a pain in the butt to deal with, right? Because now you're basically conditionalizing your code in a bad spot. So now, shoot, I need to figure out what the granted is. Oh, package manager, Granted. That's intuitive. Okay. Permission granted. Okay, and then we get some callback called override method on some permission results, and then what do? We want to show context, right? But we have to conditionalize it because sometimes people already come with context and so show context, right? So actually, this is a bonus question. How can we do this better? How can we do this better? Boo, you asked me a question on a tutorial session. You asked me about a framework that we could use to do things better. You three had asked me a question during tutorial session. This is not punishment, by the way. We're coming to tutorial session. Wow. The problem here is that this just reads terribly, right? Like, how am I supposed to know what's going on here? Remember how I think about abstractions, right? Like, this works terribly because, like, literally as I'm reading this code, it's like, oh, if this person doesn't have permission, please request permission. If not, show contacts. But I should also know that this will come as a callback on request permission results. And so basically I have two return points that will allow me to show contacts. That's not the right abstraction. So permissions is actually something that you have to make a request for all the time. So what you could do is, for example, create potentially like a base activity. In that base activity, you define the certain things that you want to request, and then you can use something like a promise or a future or whatever to basically say, on this result return, regardless if it comes through this context or this context, please show contacts, right? That's a better way. Remember, so one of the things I've emphasized is when you read your code for your product, it should read like a product. It should be like, get a user, use a user to get my timeline. It's the exact example I gave you guys. It shouldn't read like this, right? Check all this stuff, and then get your permission, and then show contacts. Contacts is a business level operation. Permissions is an implementation level detail, right? So you want to abstract those two. Does that make sense? It's really, really important. See code like this a lot, and I am at fault for writing it, but in order to show that it works, I'm writing it like this. Okay? Okay, so let's run. Cool. So we get asked, do we want permission? Allow. Okay. Let's quit this. We all hate Simulator. Actually, I think there's going to be a problem because I didn't do the mapping from to to, right? These are empty, right? Mm-hmm. Right now. So what from to to does is it actually maps your projection to your what you want to populate, your text view ID, right? So my from would be, let's say this, my display name primary, and my to would be so inside simple list item whatever, there's something called text one, right? That would be my ID. Sorry, I forgot to do that. Correct? Okay, now let's do it. Rerun. Is it running? Okay, it's running now, right? Let's rerun this to make sure. So I want you guys to see what's happening. So do you guys can see how it can get really confusing? Because you guys are remapping a lot of things, right? So taking this content provider, which has its own IDs, you're taking your list view, which also has its IDs, and then you're mapping them together. Okay, it should be running. Say allow. What happened? What's happening? What's going on? There's no error, right? Did you guys see an error? I don't think so. Okay, see? Swap cursor is returned now. Now let's evaluate this expression. Data get count. 194. Okay? So what I did before this was I actually timed my Google count to it. It would return 0 if you didn't have your account. Right. So then let's go forward. Right? I can see people. Yes? Does that all make sense? Cool. Again, the hard part here isn't the intricacies. It's how do you, like, even this, in this case, right, because you're doing all this mapping, it's just confusing to look at, you know? Like, this is really confusing to look at, right? Like, I have a projection, I have a to, and I have a from, you know, like, from my perspective, if you're working with data that you already know of, it's better just to use Roam because Roam gives you that abstraction automatically. But obviously, if you want to expose this to, like, let's say publicly, which we will go through in a sec, like the fact that they're giving you context, like the availability of contacts and how you retrieve contact data is like so like pass an ID or pass an ID here. It's a terrible interface. It's probably better to write, if you're going to create a content provider, to create also an SDK that allows them to like access it much easier, right? Because your own app would be running, and then they would basically run a separate API to go and fetch all this data. So, abstract, right? Okay, so how would we create our own content provider now? Right now we are using the contacts content provider, but now we want to create our own, right? So let's create app. Let's just say call it content provider. I don't know what exactly it will provide. Okay, so there's class content provider, and just implement it, and basically all this stuff. Does this look very similar to something, guys? What does it look similar to? Anyone know? You? What is it? What does this look similar to? Yeah, this is like CRUD stuff, right? Like similar to API stuff, but it's also really similar to like MySQL, right? Right? Like your MySQL helper is like virtually the same thing as this. So, okay. And then what you basically do is in your manifest, you have to basically tell them that you have like a provider. So your authority would just be, you can name it actually whatever you want, but I think what they've recommended is for you to call it like your package name provider. And then in this case, the name is provider. So this will basically get called, and the other thing is that you want exported, if you want this external to be true. Okay? So remember, if I go to, if I go here and look at this URI, right? And I look at this, authority URI, it would literally be the same thing. Content, // your authority, and then slash, whatever interface that you want to give, make public. So if you have multiple tables, you can expose that, right? And so all that this app content provider is doing is literally saying what's accessible and what's not. Because everything else underneath here in terms of query, get type, insert, delete, what are you guys using? You guys are going to be using your app database helper, right? Does that make sense? You're literally just going to be instantiating the delegate helper and just passing it through. You'll just simply check to see if the URI that is being called matches. So you basically get a URI every single time, and then you can simply say is URI equal to something, all right? Or you can basically do a bunch of string comparisons to see if it matches a specific table that you want, and then you can parse that table out and then make queries upon it. Cool? Does that make sense, guys? I actually won't go through this entire detail because I think it's too painful, but right, we already have the content provider. All you need to do is just take this helper, throw it in. Cool? All right, guys, we're gonna take a brief break right now and a few minute break, okay?